Here, and I am not hooked up. Bear with me. Hey, good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Sorry about that. I realized I was not hooked up. Um, what are we talking about tonight? We are talking about isolation. Um, how is everyone doing? It's day 53. I can't believe I've been doing this for 53 days in a row, and I've had a pretty exciting weekend. We had our webinar on Saturday morning and had a great turnout. If you haven't watched it yet, I would encourage you to go back to watch it. It's on either on my YouTube channel, my Facebook channel, or on my LinkedIn, or I'll put it down in the comments below after tonight's talk is over. But we had a great discussion with Ben Kaloy and myself. He's the dad coach, and we were talking about the whole idea of self care and why it's important, how to do it, and what self care looks like physically, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. And we offered so many rich tips, and I'm going to be um, exploring more of those and dissecting that whole video because I feel like there was so much rich content there. And I'd really like to hear from you all, the viewers, to hear, if whether you're a new dad or if you're a man and you're struggling with this whole idea of self care, of mindfulness, of learning how to take care better yourself so you can perform better, so you can lead better, so you can be that best self or to be that best dad that you have in your head. Go out and do it. Don't be afraid to make that time for yourself, because what I am learning in this season that I am in, and I often hear this a lot, and I'd really like to hear from many of the dads in the audience, or in who are watching this, is that you're alone. That men often feel alone, especially new dads often feel lonely. And I'm like, and I empathize. I could see how that could certainly take place. Um, but I was in church this weekend and they were talking about the whole idea of what happens when you are isolated. And the pastor was talking about how we need connection, we need friendships. And I think if you're a man, I think if you're a new dad, especially, we need connection. We need men in our lives who can pour into us, who can help us through challenging seasons, especially like the one that we are in. And we need that. And one of the questions I often get asked is, okay, I get that, but where do you find friends? And this is something that I learned a few years ago, is that very few men have great friendships, have like that guy that he can reach out to any day of the week. I have several of those men in my life, and it's something that I've been intentional about creating. Whenever I have a strong connection with anybody, especially if we're like-minded or we're on the same path, I pay attention to those things. Like I have a really good friend of mine. We've been friends for almost 12 years. We met at a church in 2010, and I probably text him every day. I mean, we're that close. I recently met Ben Kaloy, and he's another guy that I met Ben like 2 months ago, but I realized just how similar our paths are, and how much connection we have, and we have a friendship now. But people always ask me, well, how do you find those friendships? You go out and you find them. I met Ben online through a mutual connection, through someone said, hey, I'm working on this thing for new dads. Who do you know in this space? And his name came up, and it's turned into a really cool friendship that I'm excited about. Um, Other friends that I've made, have been through the gym, through church, through men's groups at church, or if you don't go to church, like I said, the gym or different places, especially if you're in this season of becoming a new dad, I think it's so important that you have those friendships and go out and find them. I mean, are you I mean, do you go to networking events? Do you go to, where are your childhood friends if you have any of those still left? I mean, what about your neighbors? I mean, there are so many different ways that men can make friends. It's just how much of an effort are you putting into that? Why is this all important? Well, when I think about isolation, especially in, and if men are saying that they feel lonely as they become a new dad, and it's a real thing. Studies show that a large majority of men go through this very lonely season when they become a dad, and it's something that I think that if you're not aware of when it hits you in the face, it's something that you need to be, aware of so you can learn how to combat it. But um, the idea of being isolated and what that does to you. I mean, think about when you isolate yourself, when you bottle things up, when you don't share, your feelings with your wife, your significant other, or your best friends. When you keep that stuff inside, it's never. We know that's not good. We know that's not good. But when you really isolate yourselves and you don't establish those relationships, you don't establish those friendships, those can cripple you. It really, what I like to think, it puts you on a one-way road to a very dark place. And when we think about veterans who are committing suicide, when we think about people who are developing drinking and alcohol habits, drug abuse, pornography addictions, or affairs, those come out of a place because those are coping coping mechanisms for something that you are feeling or you are not feeling and that you are wanting. And so you reach out, you do those things because they feel like you're going to fill that cup that is empty. But my challenge to you is, if that describes you, or if you are in that place where you're feeling lonely, reach out to me. I would happily have a cup of coffee with you, or reach out to someone who is like you or who has gone through that season just like you're in, and ask them, hey, what did you learn through this season? And that's been one of my biggest openers to new dads that I don't know is, hey, you have a 10-year-old. What did you learn through this new season of becoming a dad? Or what advice would you give to somebody who just became a parent? And those relationships, those conversations turn into connection. And that connection is a great way to avoid becoming isolated, because now you are developing those friendships. So the whole idea of tonight's talk is why isolation is bad for anybody, but more importantly, if you're a new dad, it's bad for your self-esteem. It's bad for your own emotional well-being. It's bad for your marriage. All these things. But are you aware of that? And then what are you doing to combat it? And how are you reaching out to people? Like, one of the things, I got invited to a men's group at my church probably, I don't know, a year ago. And one of my very close friends, her husband was in charge of it, or he was a part of it, and said, hey, he's going to be there. You should come check it out. And so I came check it out, and he's like, oh, it's just a small group. It was like 60 guys. But I started going, and I only knew the one person in the room. And I'm an introvert. I can be an extrovert, but when I have that on too much, it's time for me to recharge. So, and I know that about myself, but I went because they were talking about things that I was going through. And so I kept going and going and going. And eventually I started sharing, like, hey, I've gone through that, or I'm going through that same thing. And then I started making friendships. And then I started seeing them at coffee houses or the grocery store. And it's like, hey, you're in my men's group. Or I went there. And now you have these friendships, these relationships that are meaningful. And those relationships turn into connections with other people in the church. So now when I go to church, and it's a really big church, I don't feel like I'm just a small person. I don't feel like I'm so alone. And so that's a great way to, if you're looking for those connections, that's an easy way to build up those relationships. And this is something I think, I'm empathetic towards a lot of men. It's hard to find great friends. Um, but it's only hard because you're making it hard. And if you're not intentional about doing it, I talked about this 2 weeks ago. Are you relying on accidental growth, or are you being intentional about it? If you want to go make friends and build better connections and find that new friend, or find meaningful men in your life that you can just be yourself or ask questions, or, you know, get fellowship or pray with, whatever it may be, what are you doing about it? Are you just talking about it? Are you just thinking about it? Well, get off the pot, land the plane, go do it. If you know that about yourself and you need that encouragement, like I said, I would be happy to get on a phone call with you, or have a cup of coffee, or heck, even a virtual cup of coffee if you're catching this live stream and you're not local to Virginia Beach. Hit me up. I'd be happy to give you 30 minutes of my time and learn more about you. And if there are mutual connections somewhere, or if you're looking to make a connection with somebody, or you're trying to grow your lawn mowing business, or whatever, I have a lot of friends. I love a lot of connections. I'd be happy to make those for you. And so it's that easy. Just are you willing to accept that invite? Another good thing that I'm really just trying to build is that community of people like you, like me, who are in those seasons of growth, but they need that community. They need that fellowship. They need that outlet. But at the same time, they need that community, that almost like that support group, or that place where they can learn, because not everybody is like me, and I realize that from the perspective of reading books. I actually enjoy reading books because it makes me think, and then it makes me, then when I read something, it makes me want to talk about it, and so I always have things to share. But I realize that not everybody's like that. I don't know where that came from. Anyway, um, don't be alone, but if you are alone, like I said, reach out, connect with somebody, connect with me. I'd be happy to get on those phones, because the last thing that I want is men to continue down this was one way road of isolation. And where that leads you, it leads to destruction. It leads to destruction of your marriage, your family, yourself, and especially if you're a new dad, that's not who your son or daughter needs, because they are looking to you. My wife pointed this out to me tonight. They are looking at you. They are watching the way that you engage, interact with them. Are you aware of that? And sometimes we're not. I'm talking to myself here. Sometimes I'm on my phone and I'm distracted, and I'm missing the opportunity to connect with my son, who's only going to be this age once. And it's hard. It's hard to put your phone down. I get it. We're all addicted to our phones. We're all addicted to our things that can easily distract us. What are you going to do about it? So anyway, that's another topic. I'll wait for another day. But until tomorrow, be day 54. Be awesome. Be well, everybody, and be intentional. Take care.